we are transitioning into another 5-week study on this thought, life plan. Every lesson that we're going to share in this series is going to talk to us about our life plan. And I want to set this up before we transition to our scripture reading for today. A life plan is something that you and I need to understand. And this is something different than what we may have heard in the secular arena, from what we may have considered in the place of business, in the corporate arena, where you kind of sit down, whether it's in group form or individually, and map out your strategy, your 3-year goal, your 5-year plan for your life, all the things that you want to do, your objectives, your personal ambitions, etc. What I want to deal with here is not negotiating your personal tasks or goals or objectives, but I want us to understand that God has a life plan for each one of us. It comes down to the fact that God intends for us to live. That's his focus. God's life plan is founded upon that principle, his intent for us to live. You've heard me use this reference quite often. Jesus said in the disclosure of his ministry, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. God's life plan for us is for us to live. But I want us to take a very specific look at our scripture text today, taken from the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1. I want you to take a look at this. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time, now pay close attention to this section, a time to be born and a time to die. A time to be born and a time to die. I want us to really dig in this passage on verse 1. This is the opening exposition concerning the preacher, if you will, the author of Ecclesiastes. He opens with this statement: to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose. And he identifies that the first segment of time, the very first portion of time that he deals with, is this segment of a time to be born and a time to die. Now, I'm focused on the time in between the time to be born and the time to die. Because in that parentheses, inside of that section, if you will, between the being born and the time to die, is the time for us to live. That's our thought, our theme today. Life plan, a time to live. I'm focusing on what time is it right now for you in life, concerning God's life plan for you. The first element, the first movement, the first segment of God's time in his life plan for you is the time to live. Everything else is going to be negotiated based upon that factor. That God is saying right now, my life plan for you, it starts with a time to live. That's the very first aspect of God's plan for our life. His expectation is that we are going to live. Now, you might say that seems a little bit elementary, perhaps fundamental, something that we should automatically take for granted. But I must challenge us to recognize that the one thing that many of us overlook is the significance and the importance to live, to intentionally decide every day that I get up that I'm going to live. It's a choice. You've heard me negotiate this conversation in the past. God sets before us a decision, a choice to choose, watch this, to choose life or death, blessing or cursing. I say that because some of us assume that life just happens. As I said in the opening, that's incorrect. That is so far off base. Life does not just happen.